Hi, I'm really glad that I'm able to present my session in such a lovely place as Saudi Arabia. I would like to be with you in person, obviously, but well, I can't make it as of now. And I wasn't even able to deliver this session live because of some other duties that I had to fulfill within the family. So really very sorry, but I am sure that there will be a day that we will be able not only to meet live but as well in person. All right, so without this further ado, let me jump into the slides that I have prepared for you. My name is Tomasz Poszytek. I'm coming from Warsaw in Poland. I am working as an owner actually of my own small consultancy agency where we are building automations and applications. Like actually we're just delivering projects on Power Platform, SharePoint, Azure. So it's not just me, there are like a couple of other folks who are experts as well, MVPs as well. This is what I do for a living actually. And my area of expertise is automation. So I'm really focused on any kind of business automation, both in a cloud world, but as well in a desktop world. So I really try to cover anything that is required to connect the dots and make the automation running from point A to point Z. So, and I'm doing this for years, sorry, really. Like I started with automation back then in SharePoint 2007 with SharePoint Designer, and then I just evolved with any other tool that appeared on the market for automation. So it was SharePoint Designer, then it was Nintex, it was Power Automate, there was a slight, let's say, affair with Webcon and other third-party vendors that were delivering this automation layer on top of SharePoint. So, and then ever since Power Automate emerged from BizApp's world, I mean, in BizApp's world, I transitioned to Power Automate, and it was pretty seamless and natural transition. If you'd like to connect with me, if you'd like to maybe look for mutual benefits, if you'd like to cooperate with me or with my company, then I highly encourage you to go to aka.ms/poszytek, so that URL that you see on the slide right now, and then shoot me an email, write me on LinkedIn, contact me whichever way you want, so that we can talk about the case. All right. So before we actually move on, this presentation is about elevating Power Automate with AI. And so I want you, as well as myself, to be on the same page, knowing what AI in this context means, because it's not about the AI models which are simply working on the trained data and they're just giving you answers based on the information they have, but it's just a pure answer based on the information, model, and training. The AI here in the Power Automate world and generally in Power Platform, this is a Copilot, right? And then Copilot is a generative AI. Still, the generative AI is kind of a AI as it stands, that is built on the data. Then there is a model that is used to train that AI to work, but the output is not, let's say, straight based on that training data and the model, but as well on some kind of a sparkle that the model is using to allow this AI to have some more of the flexibility on interpreting the information it has to generate you the output. So the GPT stands for the Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Pre-trained meaning it is not fully trained as a regular AI, it just has some of these pieces pre-trained. So what it means is that it's utilizing these deep learning techniques, it's utilizing language understanding to actually generate you the output, the outcome, which is the most relevant for you. And it's very much powerful, at least from how I've been working with it, in all these use cases that require it to generate a code, to generate a text, to summarize a text, to find the key points in a text. You possibly know that is very useful in generation of all the images, pictures, lyrics, poems, and even music. But when speaking about the Power Automate and generating the whole automations, this is not there yet. You'll see how it works in a demo moments. Although, I'll talk about it later. So anyways, we have GPT. Now, how the model is actually being created. So first, you need to have data. Like with every other AI, you need to provide it a data. The more accurate the data, the more the better the data is, the better the outputs are going to be. So then you prepare data sets and you build a model. Then you need to fine-tune and train the model. And this operation, together with evaluation of the model, that happens in some kind of a loop. So you need to train and evaluate the model as long as the outputs that it's returning are not satisfying you as the creator. And for us, this model creation, speaking about the Copilot and GPT that we use in general, is some kind of a black box. Like, we don't really know the full information about what data was provided, how it was, how the model was built, how it was then trained. So we can just assume that it was done in the best way possible, so that the outputs that we are receiving are the best possible, right? So they're really meeting our needs. And so how does the GPT actually work? So whenever you write a prompt, because it's always like a conversational, and then it's either conversational because of writing or by talking, right? So whatever you provide is then translated into words, and then words are translated into tokens. And so tokens are sometimes just a single words, sometimes just pieces, like small sub parts of a word. Like from plural, it will try to make a single person verb, noun, and then for example, like this example here on the screen, this is tokenization of a sentence for an English language. If I do the same thing for Polish, then in Polish, tokens are even just a single letters within the word, because the Polish language is much more complex than English. Anyways, the tokens are then vectorized, which I will talk about later. And this vectorization actually makes GPT to somehow like understand and identify what we really want to achieve. And so when you're writing, like when you're using AI for writing, and so it's trying to suggest you what could be the next word in your sentence, then based on the tokens you provided and this vectorization, it is trying to find words which in that n-dimensional sphere, that I will just show you in a moment, are very much close to those tokens that you already wrote, right? So this is like an example of how this generative or generation of next words or even next letters works in terms of GPT. So what is vectorization? So the vectorization is a feature of GPT where for those tokens which are provided from your prompt and as well from training, it's trying to put them in this somehow in n-dimensional sphere space, where it's trying to describe every token with some patterns, with some adjectives, with some properties, right? And then when it's putting this vector in that space, other vectors which are having the similar length or direction can be then interpreted as somehow similar, so possibly more likely to be used in then generation steps. So then when we try to visualize or try to see these vectors for example, this 3D space in here, right? So we have now tokens which are described by such properties as age, gender, and residual, right? And we have tokens which are mainly describing person. So there is girl, there is woman, there is man, there is boy, and so on and so on. And so these tokens are then put in this space, and then their location according to those attributes shows for us, because for a GPT it's just those are just numbers, how close to each other are these specific tokens, so how similar they are to each other. And so then if we try again to visualize these vectors, then you can notice that there is some kind of a pattern here that shows that all those tokens which somehow describe a woman, in terms of gender, they are turned to the left with these blue colors. Then those which are describing or are touching the male, they're more to the right side. And so obviously GPT doesn't see it this way, although by having numbers around vectors, it is as well able to identify which 2 vectors, 3 vectors, n vectors are somehow similar to each other. And so if you're writing a sentence, if you'd like ask GPT to, hey, write me a poem about a queen, then it will know that queen might be somewhere like in the last phase of her career, but before it was a girl, then it was a woman, for example, who was whatever living somewhere in a castle, because again, castle can be a vector. I mean, the coin castle could have a vector which is somehow close to both king, queen, princess, and so on. Okay, so this is how GPT is trying to put data that it is provided for training, and as well information from your prompt together, so that in general it is able to identify what it should or what it could generate at the end. And so in terms of how it does work, first it is tokenizing what you're inputting. Then it's trying to put these tokens in this vector space to compare it with already existing vectors that it has, let's say, created as it was being trained. And it's also trying to transform what you wrote, trying to contextually understand what you wrote, as well as trying to find patterns from this in between the tokens that you wrote, and as well from what it already learned. And in the end, it's just trying to generate something as the output. And after it is generated, then there is a validation phase where it's as well trying to check if what has been generated meets the requirements, again, that are sealed in its model, like grammatical correctness, orthographical correctness, and maybe some political correctness as well, who knows. And once that validation phase is completed successfully, then something on the output is generated. Oh, for example, during the validation, it will as well try to check the legal side of the outputs. Like when you try to ask, hey, generate me an image where I look like a Homer Simpson, it will most likely, I mean, most of those generators will say, sorry, no, because Homer Simpson is a protected is a copyrighted image, and well, I can't. All right. So when speaking about the AI in Power Platform, this is what I've mentioned, that we have the OpenAI embedded, which is now called the Copilot, right? And then Copilot in Power Platform is present in many, many places. Like I even can't tell how many Copilots we already have in Power Platform. The first area that I wanted to touch, because this is very close to automation, is a so-called AI Builder, where apart from using a pre-trained, pre-built models, like for OCRing or sentiment analysis or image analysis, we're now able to write our own prompts. So let me jump to the demo and show you how that actually works. So first, when you navigate to Power Automate portal, there you can find two new areas. One new area. So AI Hub is what has been called previously the AI Builder, and AI Prompts is what I wanted to focus you on. So with AI Prompts, you're able to ask, let me just show you in a moment. So it has to load. And after it is loaded, you can now click to build your own prompt, right? And then when you're building your own prompt, you're able first, to name it obviously. So I'll name it travel summary, because I'll use it to summarize the the request for a travel. And so then you are able to choose what model you want to use. Right, so I'll go with the 4.0 mini because that is going to work very, very quick. Then you are able as well to add data sources from different knowledges and to add the instructions. So what I want to do, I have here a prompt that I want to use. All right. So I want it to imagine that it is an IT manager and it has the subordinates who are traveling a lot, and they always need to write a justification why they want to travel. And so from these sometimes very long justifications, I wanted to just give me an action points of the summary of what is the purpose of a travel, the justification for the costs, and this description of the travel. And so I have here an example of such a justification. And now I want my, the model to actually generate it so that it will summarize it as those action points. So let's see if this is working. All right. So yeah, the response looks pretty successful, and it's good to me. So let's parameterize it. First, again, I can make the output to look like as a text or as JSON, but as well, what I can do is I can configure the temperature and, the number of records I want to retrieve. So the temperature, if you're aware, this is the last parameter I haven't mentioned in terms of GPT. The higher the temperature is, the more generative AI is going to be, and the answers, the responses, are going to be less similar to each other. By default is by 0, so it's very predictable, and the response is going to be pretty much the same every time. If I change it to 1 and now trying to test the prompt, the responses can really be different, but are not. All right, the last thing I really want to do is to change this into an input, and I want this input to not be taken from any data source. I want it to be just a text, and so I'll make this as an input variable, justification, and let's put here the sample data. Okay, I just need to get rid of all these things that are present here. All right, and then let's test it again. Right, so that looks again very nice, but because the temperature now is 1, in the first attempt the response was returned as a markdown language, right? So that looks much better if I'd like to use it for approvals. So I will change it again to something closer to 0, hoping that it will again mark down this, but no. Anyways, how I can change it, right? Only action points, use markdown language for output. Okay, so let's do a simple test again. I don't want this markdown here. You know what? I'll just get rid of this because I feel it's gonna mess up with the response. Okay, so now I'll save it, and with that I have now a model created, and this model I can later use in Power Automate Cloud Flows, or just straightforward as you have it. You can as well use it in Copilot Studio, right? So there is my summary. All right. So let's get back to the slides, because we're going to take it further. So the next thing is Copilot in Power Automate. In Power Automate, you have it in several places. So you can use Copilot and ask it to generate you a whole automation, a whole flow. You can ask it, when you do have a flow generated, to assist you in its authoring. And the last thing that you have, how you can use Copilot in Power Automate, is a feature called a Copilot assistance for expressions, or in builder, an expression builder, so that you can ask Copilot to generate you an expression. And also, sorry, I didn't mention it. The last area, pretty new, it's still in preview, is a so-called generative action. And then generative action is again a feature where you write a prompt, and then Copilot tries to use actions and data sources it thinks might be required to finalize and generate an output for the prompt you wrote. If I do have time, I'll show that as well. But as of now, let's jump over to Copilot in Power Automate. Okay, so first I navigate to Home, and on the home screen of Power Automate portal, come on, you can notice that there is this large area that is called Create Your Automation with Copilot. So you can start from here, or you can as well go to Create, and under Create there is this Describe It to Design It. So that's the same thing. So either you go to Describe It to Design It, or you start from a home where you write your prompt. The end result is going to be just the same, so that the Copilot is going to be used to generate you a process. And, well, I have another prompt here that I want to use. And my prompt is that I want to generate a flow that is, maybe I'll click it and I read it later. All right. So what I wanted is to build a flow that is triggered whenever an item is created on a SharePoint, and then I want to have a condition that checks if the total amount or if a value is above 1K. And if it is, then it means it requires an approval. And then based on the approval outcomes, I want to send an approval or rejection email to requester. If the value is below that amount, then I just want to send a confirmation email to requester that their travel request has been approved. And so I have here a very simple SharePoint list where users are requesting or placing requests for their travels, right? And so with every request, they need to provide this justification, this reason for travel, and then indicate some other information like hotel, airfare, and then for each of these cost centers, they need to provide a value, the amount of cost. So what has been generated here is pretty much what I actually need, right? So there is a trigger, is okay. There is a condition which I think is going to validate whether this amount is above 1K or below. If it's true, then it's going into approval. Then if this is, when the approval is completed, it checks the approval outcome. And then I can assume that this is for the approved, this is for the rejected. And as well, there is this branch that when the amount is below 1K. If I'm unhappy with what I'm seeing, I can always ask Copilot to modify something by providing some more information. And also you have a variation. So you have the second version that you can use if you're unhappy with the first one, although the second one in this case looks somehow worse. So what I want to do is to keep it and continue. So the next step is to authorize all the connections that it's using. Oops, I need to re-authenticate my connection to Outlook. All right, that should be good. Cool. So let's create a flow and see what we have to do. And this is the place where I really want you to listen to what I'm saying. So Microsoft says that these AI generated flows are for regular citizen developers, even more for makers who don't really know how to use Power Automate. And so when these people were using templates, they at least had to know what they want to achieve, like what are their inputs, what are their outputs, and so on. Now having a prompt, they are being given in return something, an automation that, like in my case, it requires a lot of further configuration to make it work, right? So there are lots of actions which are unconfigured. Also, well, I am pretty aware of how cloud flows work, and what I want to achieve, like how would I build this flow if I was building this from scratch. Now, people who are not skilled, who doesn't have this knowledge in building cloud flows, for them it is really hard to evaluate and validate whether what they received is anything they actually wanted. They can only trust AI. And that is really bad, because if you can't validate these outputs, how can you tell whether this is what you wanted, whether this is going to work effectively, whether this will deliver you what you really need? And then instead of trying to create things on their own while learning, they will maybe try to make this thing work just to be able in the end to evaluate, oh no, that actually doesn't work. I mean, or maybe that actually doesn't do what I wanted. And then they will be in this moment, in this position that they lost lots of time for trying to make this work, and then to only understand, oh right, so I like lost hours on making this work, but actually need something else. So what I'd like to emphasize by saying this is that with AI in Power Automate, and with AI anywhere, you need to have at least a knowledge that will allow you to justify whether what you were given in return is what you needed, if this is going to work, if this is going to give you this benefit that you're expecting it. All right, so I'll try now and to make it work. So first, I need to configure it with connected with the lists that I want to use. So there is this travel requests, cool. Then I want to use the first to respond, and I will assign this task to myself. So let's say this is a travel approval task. I want this to be assigned to myself. For the details, I don't have them yet, so I'll just leave it open. Now let's see what is here, right? So again, it is even less than a blank template, because the blank template has at least some of those actions pre-configured. Now this template, what has been generated, looks like very, very empty. So I need to really configure it on my own. So I need to get the outcome. I need to say it's approve. Now I can bet that a maker who does not have experience with Power Automate approvals would say is equal to maybe approved. No, it's not going to be approved. It's approve. Then the outcome. Body author email looks fine, has been approved, looks okay. But I as well want to update this request so that it's where it is. its status is going to be set to approved. Right, so then I want to use the status. Oh gosh, approval status value. There it is. To approved. Okay. Now trigger outputs body ID. That should work. That should work fine. Now let's check this one. Okay. Then again, I need to update these parameters here. Experiments, and then travel requests. Yep, again, I need to set title because it is required. Then approval status value. Let's not change it to rejected. And last thing is here, email. Okay, and this here. And the approval status will be automatically set to approved. All right, so with that, the workflow now is running, but the first condition does not. So, well, it's trying to use some artificial field name, and I don't really want it. So what I can do is I can ask, again, here Copilot, because again, I have a prompt here. Let's assume I don't know what I want. So I'll ask it, hey, before or maybe after the trigger, insert an action that adds value from hotel cost to value from I know airfare. I think airfare. Let's just check what was this again. So it was a estimated airfare, estimated hotel, right? So from estimated hotel cost column to value from estimated airfare cost column. Now, how do you think? Will that work? I doubt, personally. So whenever you type in something, it will try to generate or write a response that will maybe help you to work on your own to accomplish that prompt. But first of all, just take a look how much time it needs to complete. And I'm really curious what will be the outcome. And yeah, that's really taking lots of time. All right, I'll stop generating this because I don't want to waste more time. So I'll use a compose. Basically, what I was trying to show you is that I'm using Copilot here to generate something within the flow. Usually doesn't work. So I would not recommend to doing this that way. However, as mentioned, you can use a Copilot expression here. So what I will do here is actually I'll copy this prompt and I will use it here. So I want to add values from estimated hotel cost column to value. All right, and let's see. And then we have the add expression, trigger body. Okay, well, looks legit, looks good to me. So I'll just add it. And then I'll use this information here. So we'll use compose and then is greater than. So with that, I'm cool. Now, what I want to do as well is to use now the AI Builder action. So for that, I do have this AI Builder model, and there is something with a prompt. I don't know where it was. So prompt. yeah, create text with GPT using prompt, okay? And so here, I can now select those prompts that I have created. So there's a travel summary. And when I choose it, you'll see all those input text variables or, inputs that you have defined. And so in here, I'll use the justification. Sorry, description, right? What was description? Gosh, what was the field's name? Reason for travel. God. And then I will use it as the body for the approval. So I will just use that text as the output. Okay, so now I can save the flow. I don't know how you like the name of the flow. It's pretty bad. So once it's saved, I'll try to make the name shorter. Yeah, just let's call it a travel approval. And with that, I will simply create a new item, but I just don't want really to, create a new one. I'll just copy paste it, okay? You can see that I've done that multiple times. So it really works. Okay, so the new item is now created. The new item is created. And so let's see when the flow is triggered. I will be then able to navigate to approvals. So I do have approvals here. And when it runs, it will just show up. I hope that there are no errors in the flow itself, so that it will really work fine. Well, let's see. All right, the flow is now running, which is a good sign, obviously. And let's see what has been returned. Well, it's a good sign again. That is a very good sign. The text was generated, so let's see what has been generated as the approval. Okay, so this is the approval task. Well, it did not use the markdown language, like it did not surround the labels with asterisks, making them bold, but still that looks pretty okay to me. So what I can say is yes, approve, confirm, which will resume the flow to go to the approve branch, and then obviously send me an email. Oh, there is a bad request. Now why? Oh, because it says that all right, so the parameter that this action used was actually incorrect. I did not catch that. Because why? Well, check it out. There is no such a field like author email. It could be correct if it was using the author/email, because the author is an object and email is a property of that object. There is no such a property under the body object as author email. So if I'd like to make it correct, I would need to use created by email, right? And then when you hover it, see, this is how it looks, author/email. So I'll leave it for now because I don't really need it anymore. Because let's jump over to a next demo and the next part of the automation, which is obviously the Power Automate desktop. Because as I've mentioned in the beginning, I'm covering the whole automation stack. So RPA, robotic process automation, is included. Now, the GPT and the Copilot in Power Automate desktop is again visible in several places. However, I don't know if this is just myself, but I only see GPT, like the Copilot in Power Automate desktop, like in a full throttle, when I'm using automations in the US region. The European region, as of now, does not really fully support what we have as a Copilot in Power Automate desktop. And so there you have several ways. Like you can use GPT, you can use Copilot to help you author an RPA process. And then you can author it either by clicking and describing at the same time what you want to achieve, or by writing a prompt. Next, Copilot helps you to help you as you're authoring. You can write a text, you can write a prompt asking for some support, and it will not change anything in your desktop flow, but it can write out you information where you can look up for a solution. And last but not least, the most, I think, powerful feature is that there are several actions in Copilot for desktop, in the part of my desktop, that you can use for for writing a code, for code automation. And so GPT in there allows you to write a prompt and then return in response a working, or well, again, you have to validate it, a working code in PowerShell, in JavaScript for desktop, in Python, I think for Visual Basic script as well. So let's check it out. All right. So now again, I'll switch to the designer. And so here I have this small ChatGPT test. I'll open it. And as it is being opened, I'll show what I meant by Copilot in part of my desktop. So here, as I've mentioned, you have two options. You can describe it with Copilot. So again, you can write a prompt just like I showed you in Partomate in a Cloudflow, and then it will try to generate something. Or you can use this feature that is called Recode with Copilot. And then the recorder, the last approach I took was pretty bad, and it failed. The idea here is that you're trying to show Copilot what you're doing and describe what you're doing at the same time. And then based on that, it will generate you a running flow. You can try it on your own. So the point is here that I have a process that I want to transform a large amount of information. So what I wanted to do is to navigate to invoices and then to get this whole grid and transform it into a CSV or into a JSON. So when I look at what is being returned by Partomate Desktop from this action, that looks pretty bad. So just take a look at this. Some information is repeated, other information is just divided into rows. And obviously you could try and build a lot of steps in Partomate Desktop to transform it to regular expressions, to use whatever splits to manipulate with this text string, and then eventually in the end to retrieve to receive either a CSV or a JSON. But it's much easier if you just do it, for example, using the AI Builder. So you can again here use AI Builder to write an instructions, and in the end it will transform the text you give or the input you give into something else. It's really, really powerful. So that's the one option. The other option is when you, as I mentioned, when you navigate to scripting, some of the actions are supplemented with this those black stars, which means that in here you're able to use Copilot as well. So what I will do now, I will ask here Copilot that I want to convert the text that I provided, that you saw in this whatever weird format, into a CSV that has those specific columns, right? So this is what I want to achieve, and I want to provide the information that it has to convert or transform as the input variable, right? And so when I now run the flow, you will notice that what will be returned by Copilot or the GPT in the 9th step is pretty much what I need. Let me just show you that in the response here, right? So this is very much a CSV I needed. Very awesome. So with that, I'm pretty okay to just go on. But I would like it to be converted into a JSON because I'd love to see it as a JSON. And so for that, I'm running a PowerShell script that I prompted with this information, that I want to write a PowerShell that converts a text in CSV format, which is command limited, into a JSON format and returns it as a text, right? So again, this code that you see here, it has been generated, again, the code here, has been generated by Copilot based on the prompt I provided. So let's see what will be turned from that step. All right. So first it's generating that CSV, which is pretty much okay. I close it. And then it's running PowerShell. That returns something. Now, what has been returned is this kind of a CSV. The JSON, which again is very much correct, right? So I have an array of objects, but this array of objects is not very useful because with that, I am really not able to simply get a single row as the output. So I can't, let's say, use the dot notation and say that I want to get from this JSON a record for ID 1001, because it's just an attribute of an object within an array. So I would need simply to filter this array and then look for the item that has ID 1001. So what I could do is to, again, either try and redefine the prompt in PowerShell so that it will simply generate a different JSON, or what I've done is that I again asked GPT to convert me that JSON that I was returned by the previous action into this kind of the schema, right? So that the ID value is actually an attribute name for other properties of that object. So then I will be able in the end to use it with the dot notation. So let's see how this is going to work. And what I'm saying is that with the prompt and that action, it might take a little bit more time to generate as if you had a regular Power Automate desktop operations, because, well, they just work fast. Here with GPT, it has to be sent, it has to be transformed, it has to be returned. So there are seconds to accomplish it, right? But in the end, you're spending much less time to get what you need, as if you were trying to really build this whole manually. So what I was given in a return was now this object, where you see that the IDs, the invoice IDs, are used as attributes, so that I can actually use a dot notation to get details of a specific row for the specific ID. And also, it has been successfully converted into a working JSON, into a working object. So with that, I can really work within the Power Automate desktop as well, just by using this JSON notation or the custom object notation within the Power Automate desktop, right? So that's really cool. Okay, so because I still have some time, what I would like to show you, apart from all these things, is that step that we call a generative action, right? So with generative action, it's a run generative action. I can generate a new action where I again need to describe what I want to achieve. So let's say why I can't type anything here. Okay. No. Right. I have no idea what's going on here. Looks like this machine simply just slowed down for whatever reason. However, what you can do as well is to create the generative action, like let's say up front. So you can go under My Flows, and here in My Flows you have this new tab called Generative Actions, right? So this is new here, and so in there, yeah, that is something that has been created some time ago. You can just create a new. Oh, well, you can't. Sorry, I thought you were able to create a new generative action straight from here, but apparently you can just, well, see what have been generated from other flows. So this was my attempt to generate, the full logic within the Cloudflow using generative action, so that I wanted this black box to add to values and then actually run the whole approval workflow. So what was given in return are those input parameters that the generative action thinks it has to use. Although for this scenario, well, it does not, because it doesn't really need to use anything around SharePoint, so I can get rid of those. You can as well write your own input values that you think are required for the automation to run successfully. So the only thing that I really need to have is the requester email second value and first value. I am not really sure why it works so slow, because, well, it hasn't. Okay, so then apart from the input information, you have as well the ability to define outputs, which will be returned by the action. And then based on your prompt, the action itself is, like I say, generating these suggestions. So based on your prompt, it is generating what connections should it use, as well what input information, output information it will provide. So this is how it works. You can as well provide it up to these 3 non-confidential docs that that can supplement this model. I mean, there's that GPT in here with information to proceed, and then you can actually try and preview it, so to see how this is going to work in action, right? And because right now it is working very, very slow, I don't think I will be able to showcase it, but you can again try it on your own. The only thing you really need is just to have the premium license. Well, let's maybe try. You see something is really not working. So it's just very slow. And I'm somehow running out of time. So let's see. So when you put this action into your Cloudflow, or when you define it within your Cloudflow, then the interface is just the same. And you can as well test it within your Cloudflow. And then in your Cloudflow, this will just appear as a single action, like a black box single action, so that when you analyze how your flow is built, you'll just see one black box that you need to click to get into its details to see how does it work. Now, if I think this is beneficial, again, that can be generative. So depending on information and this temperature and its creativity, the outputs may vary. So I wouldn't use it any time for those real life processes where you need to include some communication with your customer or send any notification even internally, because you simply have a little of control what can be sent. So I mean, as of now, I can't really think about a hard and solid example, solid use case for this to work. I don't even know if this is now running, if this is working, because let's see if I have received any approval request, maybe. No. So I honestly have no idea what is going on. Right now it says it's running. So what I should see now is like a list of actions and as well explanations of why GPT took that action instead of other. So it will try to show you what steps it is now performing, and as well the validation of why it went that path, right? And what it did in that path, and what were the outputs of specific actions. So you would see like a full log of all the activities GPT did during this specific generative action. But for whatever reason, it just doesn't work in my tenant or in this demo right now. So sorry, try it on your own. I need to summarize the whole presentation. Sorry. So anyways, whenever you're using AI, just be sure this is, be aware and know and remember that it's just an AI. So always validate the outputs, never trust them, and double check if there are no errors. Apart from what I showed you, there is as well like a small bonus. So if you're using the independent publisher connectors, or if you're using the OpenAI, the ChatGPT, you can as well integrate them with your Cloudflows. So either you can trigger your Cloudflows from OpenAI chat, or you can as well get some more control over OpenAI by the independent publisher connector. So to summarize, there are several things that we can really say GPT is very good. So it will definitely enhance our productivity if only we know what we want to achieve. It does understand what we are writing usually, and better and better. So it's getting better and better in understanding what we need. It can be customized and personalized. So the outputs, the outcomes are going to be much more alike to what we would generate if we were generating that information on our own. So with all these steps, when you have to summarize, generate text, generate code, translate, all these areas GPT really works well. However, there are the bad sides of overusing GPT or over-trusting to GPT as well. So first, the risk of misinformation and this over-reliance on automation. Don't trust AI on anything it generates. Don't trust it is always correct. Don't trust it will always work. Always validate what you are given in return, so that you can really be the owner and the master of those outputs, of those outcomes. Because the quality of what is being generated does not always meet the criteria and your expectations. Also, what is important, GPT, the outcomes of GPT are heavily related on or dependent on the data that was used for the training. So if you're using GPT that you know on what information was trained, that's fine. But if you don't, then always validate what has been generated. All right, so if you don't have any questions, I would really love to ask you to navigate to my social media, where you can just ask them. And as well, if you do have any automation challenge in your companies, if you do have any AI automation challenges in your companies, and you're looking for help and you'd like to, cooperate with me, you'd like to ask me to help you, then I'm always open for any kind of cooperation. Again, just reach out to me and let's discuss this either on email or LinkedIn or wherever else you'd like it to be. Once again, thank you very much, and I wish you a pleasant rest of the conference and other editions of this conference. And well, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. Thank you.